Abandoned and starving, the old world was quiet. Broken houses stood in the shadow of giant, twisted trees. The air was cold and dry. Under the fading light, a young alien girl sat alone in a ruined shelter. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were large and shining with tears. She hugged her thin arms around her knees and shivered. Her name was Lyra, but no one called her by name anymore. Everyone she knew had left her behind. Lyra's stomach ached with hunger. For 3 days, she had found no food. She remembered the last time she ate a handful of dry roots and sour berries, quickly snatched before the others saw her. Back then, her group was still here, but one by one, they left her. They said she was weak and useless, only a burden. Her own people turned away when she begged for help. Lyra watched them walk into the forest, their faces hard and cold. She wanted to scream, but she was too tired. Now she only had the wind and the empty silence for company. The night crept in. The sky turned deep purple, and the stars blinked above like cold eyes. Lyra pressed her back against the cracked wall, listening for sounds outside. The forest was full of dangerous wild animals with sharp teeth, strange shadows that moved without reason, and sometimes even worse things. She was afraid, but more than that, she was hungry and weak. Suddenly, Lyra heard a noise. It was faint. At first, just a crunch of dry leaves, then another and another, coming closer. Her heart beat faster. She pulled her legs closer, trying to hide behind a broken metal box. Maybe it was a wild animal, smelling her fear and hunger. Maybe it was an enemy from another tribe. She held her breath, wishing she could disappear. The steps stopped right outside her shelter. She dared not move. The door creaked as it was pushed open. Light from a small torch spilled inside. Lyra squinted, afraid to look, afraid to make a sound. A shadow filled the doorway, a figure much taller than her people, dressed in strange clothes. With a strong build and covered in dust. It was a human. Lyra had only heard stories about humans. Some said they were monsters who destroyed everything in their path. Others whispered they had magic in their blood. She had never seen one so close. The human's face was tired, but his eyes were sharp and searching. He looked around, then saw Lyra huddled in the corner. For a moment, everything was still. Lyra's heart pounded. She waited for him to shout, or chase her out, or worse. But the human did nothing. Instead, he knelt down slowly, keeping his hands open and empty so she could see he held no weapon. He spoke softly, but his words were strange. She could not understand. Still, his voice did not sound angry. Lyra watched his every move. The human reached into his bag and took out something wrapped in cloth. He opened it carefully, and Lyra's nose caught a smell warm and sweet. Her mouth watered. The human broke off a piece of bread and offered it to her, sliding it across the dusty floor. Lyra stared at the food. Was it safe? Was this a trick? Her stomach twisted with hunger. She reached out, slow and careful, and took the bread. She ate quickly, afraid he might take it back. The bread was dry, but it tasted like hope. Tears stung her eyes, but she hid them. The human watched her eat. He smiled, not a big smile, just enough to make his eyes softer. He sat near the door, leaving space between them. He looked around the shelter, noticing the broken roof and the cold wind coming in. He took off his jacket and handed it to Lyra. She did not move at first, but the cold made her brave. She pulled the jacket around her thin body. It was heavy and warm, and smelled of earth and smoke. They sat together in silence for a long time. Lyra felt her fear begin to melt. She watched the human as he started a small fire with sticks and a spark tool. The flames danced and chased away some of the darkness. Lyra listened to the human hum a soft song. It was strange, but somehow comforting. Outside, the night was still full of danger. But inside the broken shelter, something changed. Lyra was not alone anymore. Someone had found her, fed her, and shared his warmth. She did not know what would happen next. But for the first time since her people left, she felt a tiny bit of hope. She wondered, why did this human help her? What did he want? Was this the beginning of something new, or just a kind act in a cruel world? As she drifted to sleep, questions spun in her mind, but the hunger was gone, and the fear was softer now. The kind stranger morning sunlight slowly crept through the cracks in the broken shelter. Lyra woke up with the strange feeling of warmth still wrapped around her shoulders. The human's jacket was heavy but soft, smelling of safety and campfire smoke. She looked around, half expecting to find herself alone again. But the human was there, sitting near the fire's cold ashes, staring at a small, glowing screen in his hand. He looked up and noticed she was awake. His face was calm and gentle. Lyra's heart raced with worry. What would he do now? Would he ask her to leave? Or take his things back? But instead, the human smiled and spoke a few soft words in his own language, as if he was saying, "Good morning." She could not understand him, but something in his voice made her less afraid. Slowly, the human reached into his bag and took out more food. This time, it was a small piece of dried fruit and a round, sweet-smelling cake. He set them on a flat stone, pushing it gently toward her. Lyra watched, her hunger fighting with her fear. Was it really for her? She looked at the human's face. He nodded and pushed it closer. Lyra's thin fingers shook as she picked up the food. She ate, slowly this time, trying to hide how hungry she really was. The human watched her, but not with anger, only with kindness and maybe a bit of sadness. He ate some food himself and then took out a strange container. He opened it and poured a clear liquid into a cup, then gave it to her. Lyra sniffed it, afraid it might be poison. But it was only water, cool and clean. She drank, and her dry throat finally felt better. Outside, the world was waking up. Birds called from the twisted trees, and somewhere far away, an animal made a strange cry. Lyra felt a little stronger now, but still unsure what would happen. The human stood up and stretched his arms. He looked around the broken shelter, then started picking up the mess. He stacked the broken metal boxes and pushed some of the fallen boards into a neat pile. He seemed to want to fix things. Lyra watched him with wide eyes. She had never seen someone work so quietly and patiently. When he pointed to a spot where rain leaked in, then to a piece of metal, Lyra understood. He wanted to fix the roof. She hesitated, but then stood up to help. Together, they moved the boards and placed the metal over the hole. It was hard work for her weak arms, but the human helped and never shouted or got angry. As they worked, Lyra noticed something strange. The human kept using his hands to make simple signs, pointing, waving, smiling. Slowly, Lyra understood his meaning. When he needed help, he pointed. When he wanted her to be careful, he raised his hand. When he was happy, he smiled or nodded. She found herself copying his signs. Soon, they were speaking a silent language made of looks and small gestures. After the shelter was repaired, the human pointed to himself and said a word. "Jace." Lyra blinked, confused. He pointed to himself again and said, "Jace." He pointed to her, waiting. Lyra understood. He wanted to know her name. She said softly, "Lyra." The human repeated it, "Lyra," and smiled. Her heart felt lighter. For the first time in a long while, someone said her name with care. Later, the human Jace gathered sticks and made another small fire. Lyra watched as he cooked something in a metal pot, the smell making her mouth water. As they ate, Jace took out a small book filled with strange drawings and words. He pointed to a picture of a tree, then pointed to a tree outside. Lyra nodded. He smiled and drew other pictures, a house, a river, a bird. Each time Lyra nodded, or tried to say the word in her own way. Jace listened and repeated, always patient. As the sun moved across the sky, the two sat together, sharing food, learning small words, and helping each other. Once, Lyra heard a noise in the forest, a sharp, dangerous sound. She froze, fear returning. But Jace stood and moved to the doorway, holding a long stick as a weapon. He watched the trees until the sound faded away. Then he returned and sat near Lyra, his eyes gentle but watchful. She felt safer with him nearby. When night came again, Jace checked the shelter to make sure it was safe. He handed Lyra the jacket and lay down near the door, between her and the outside world. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling tired but less afraid. She listened to Jace hum his strange, soft song. For the first time since her people left, she dreamed not of hunger and fear, but of hope. The world outside was still dangerous. But inside their small shelter, two strangers had begun to trust each other. Lyra wondered what tomorrow would bring. Building trust, the days passed slowly, and each day brought something new for Lyra and Jace. The forest was cold in the mornings, and Lyra always woke up first. She would watch the human Jace as he slept near the shelter door, always ready to protect them both. Lyra wondered why he stayed. He could have left, just like everyone else. But Jace never left her alone, not even for a moment. One morning, Lyra tried to help by gathering sticks for the fire. Her hands shook, but she wanted to show Jace that she could be useful. Jace noticed and smiled, taking the sticks and patting her shoulder softly. It was such a simple thing, but Lyra felt a small happiness grow inside her. They did not share many words, but they shared actions. Jace fixed the shelter with strong hands, and Lyra swept the floor clean with a broken branch. Each day, they made the shelter a little safer and a little warmer. After breakfast, Jace showed Lyra how to use a sharp stone to cut roots from the ground. He pointed to safe plants, warning her away from the red ones that burned the tongue. Lyra learned quickly. She was careful to do everything as Jace showed her. When she made mistakes, he did not scold her. Instead, he made a funny face or laughed quietly, and Lyra found herself laughing too. The fear inside her chest began to fade. One afternoon, as they searched for water by the stream, Lyra heard a strange noise, a growl, low and close. Her heart jumped, and she froze in fear. Jace saw her fear and moved quickly. He picked up a thick branch and stood between Lyra and the dark bushes. Suddenly, a wild animal leapt out, its eyes glowing yellow and teeth sharp. Lyra was so scared. She could not move. But Jace shouted, waving the branch, and the animal stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then, slowly, the animal backed away, disappearing into the forest. Lyra let out a long breath she did not know she was holding. She looked at Jace with wide eyes. He smiled, just a small smile, as if to say, "It's okay, I'm here." After that day, Lyra felt even more safe with Jace. He had protected her, even when he did not have to. That night, she gave him the last piece of sweet fruit she had saved. Jace thanked her with a nod, and they shared it, sitting close to the small fire. The days grew warmer, and Lyra grew stronger. She and Jace learned to hunt together, moving quietly through the trees. Lyra used her sharp eyes to spot hidden fruit, while Jace taught her how to make traps for small animals. Sometimes, Lyra would draw pictures in the dirt to explain where she found food, and Jace would draw a map in return. It became a game, and soon the shelter was filled with small drawings on the floor. One day, Jace found an old broken music player among the ruins. He fixed it with patience and clever hands, using wires and tape. When he pressed a button, soft music filled the air. Lyra had never heard music before, not like this. The sound was gentle, almost like wind through leaves, but with something that made her heart feel light. Jace smiled and closed his eyes, lost in the music. Lyra listened, her worries forgotten for a little while. In the evenings, after dinner, Jace would teach Lyra new words in his language. He would point to the stars and say, "Star," then wait for her to repeat. Lyra taught him her own words too. They laughed when they made mistakes, but never gave up. Their silent language became a mix of words, signs, and smiles. One rainy night, as thunder shook the sky, Lyra remembered the day her people left her. She could not sleep. She sat by the window, hugging her knees. Jace noticed and sat beside her, not saying anything, just offering quiet company. Lyra felt tears on her cheeks, but she did not hide them this time. She pointed to her heart, then to the door where her people had vanished. Jace nodded, showing he understood. He picked up a stone and drew a picture in the dirt. A small girl standing alone, then a human beside her. Lyra smiled through her tears. She was not alone now. Each day, the trust between Lyra and Jace grew stronger. They became a team, two broken souls finding hope in each other. The fear that once filled Lyra's heart faded with every small act of kindness. She still wondered about the future, but for now, she had someone who cared. And that made all the difference in the world. The pain of the past. The next few days brought gentle rain to the forest, filling the air with the fresh smell of wet leaves and earth. Lyra felt stronger every morning. Her hands no longer shook when she gathered wood, and her legs could carry her farther into the woods. But at night, when the wind howled and thunder rolled, memories from her past would return, sharp and painful. Evening, Jace made a warm soup from roots and wild herbs. As they sat near the fire, Lyra watched the golden light dance on the walls. The storm outside seemed far away. Jace hummed softly, a song from his world, while Lyra tried to braid her hair as she did when she was small. It was a peaceful moment until a loud crack of thunder shook the shelter. Lyra jumped, her heart pounding. For a second, she was back in the past, the night her tribe left her behind. She remembered their angry voices and cold faces. They said she was too weak, that she would only slow them down. She had begged them to stay, promising to work harder, to eat less, to do anything, but no one listened. When the first drop of rain hit her face that night, she was truly alone for the first time. The pain inside her chest grew until she could not hold it in. A soft sob escaped her lips. She tried to cover her face, ashamed of her tears, but Jace noticed. He put down his bowl and came to sit beside her. He did not touch her, but his presence was gentle and kind. Jace reached into his bag and pulled out his small notebook. With a charcoal stick, he drew a simple picture: an alien girl alone in the rain, her face sad. Then he drew another picture, the same girl, but now she was sitting by a fire with a human. He showed Lyra the drawings and looked at her with understanding. Lyra sniffed, wiped her eyes, and picked up the stick. She drew a group of her own people, their faces turned away from her. She added herself, small and alone in the corner. Then, on the next page, she drew Jace with a big smile and herself beside him. It was a clumsy drawing, but it made her smile through her tears. Jace began to speak in his language, slow and soft. Lyra could not understand all the words, but she listened. He pointed to himself and made a sad face. Then, using his hands in pictures, he explained that he too had lost people in his life. He drew a picture of himself as a boy, standing beside his family. Then, another picture of himself, older and alone, carrying a heavy bag. Lyra watched, realizing that pain was something both humans and aliens could share. The fire crackled, filling the silence with gentle warmth. Lyra hugged her knees and looked at Jace. She did not know what to say, so she just nodded. Sometimes, she thought, sharing pain made it hurt less. Later that night, Lyra lay awake, listening to the rain on the roof. She thought about her people. Where were they now? Did they ever miss her? Would they even care if she was alive? For so long, she had believed that being left behind was her fault. Maybe she was weak. Maybe she did not belong anywhere, but now she was not alone. Jace was not her family, but he was her friend. He shared his food and his warmth. He protected her from wild animals and the cold. He never shouted, never turned his back. Slowly, Lyra began to believe that maybe she was not useless after all. The next morning, Lyra woke early. The rain had stopped, and the world was quiet again. Jace was already outside, trying to fix a broken tool. Lyra watched him for a moment, then walked over and helped him hold the parts steady. Their hands touched for just a second, and Lyra felt a new kind of warmth inside her chest. That day, they worked together to build a small fence around their shelter. Jace taught Lyra how to tie strong knots using vines. Lyra showed Jace which plants could be woven into strong ropes. They laughed when the fence fell down the first time, and together, they tried again until it stood tall and sturdy. When the sun set, Lyra and Jace sat together by the fire. Lyra looked up at the stars and realized she was not afraid of the dark anymore. The pain of her past was still there, but it did not control her. She was stronger now, and she had a friend who believed in her. As she drifted to sleep, Lyra whispered, "A thank you to the night sky." She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but with Jace by her side, she was ready to face them. For the first time in her life, she felt hope for the future. Learning to survive together with every sunrise, Lyra and Jace's bond grew stronger. Their small shelter was no longer just a place to hide. It was now a home filled with quiet laughter, warm food, and gentle friendship. Each morning, Jace would check their supplies and fix broken things, while Lyra gathered wild herbs or fetched water from the stream. They had created a new life together, built on trust and small acts of kindness. One bright day, the air was fresh and the forest was alive with birds singing. Jace wanted to teach Lyra something new. He took her by the hand and led her deep into the woods. Lyra was nervous, but she trusted Jace. He showed her how to set small traps to catch wild animals, explaining every step with slow words and simple drawings in the dirt. Lyra watched closely, repeating his actions. It took many tries, but when she finally set her first trap correctly, Jace gave her a big smile and a thumbs up. Lyra giggled, proud of her work. They spent the whole day exploring together. Jace showed Lyra how to read animal tracks in the mud. He explained how broken branches or soft footprints meant something had passed by recently. Lyra, with her sharp eyes, pointed out secret berry bushes and safe paths through the thick undergrowth. She taught Jace which leaves could heal cuts and which mushrooms to avoid. Their teamwork made everything easier and safer. As the sun climbed higher, the two found a large, flat rock beside a small waterfall. Jace pulled out a fishing line and hook from his pack. Lyra watched, amazed, as he tied the line, baited the hook, and threw it into the water. She sat beside him, dipping her toes into the cool stream, listening to the gentle splash of water and the distant calls of birds. For a little while, there was only peace. Suddenly, Jace's line jerked. He pulled, and after a short struggle, lifted a small silver fish from the water. Lyra clapped her hands, her eyes wide with excitement. Jace handed her the fish, and she studied it, curious. Together, they caught 2 more fish before packing up and heading home. Back at the shelter, Lyra cleaned the fish as Jace prepared the fire. She remembered how her mother once did this, long ago. It felt good to remember, even if it also hurt a little. Soon, the smell of roasting fish filled the air. They ate together, sharing smiles and simple words in both languages. After lunch, dark clouds gathered above the forest. Rain began to fall in gentle sheets. Jace and Lyra hurried to bring their things inside. As the storm grew louder, Jace handed Lyra a small sharp stone and an old piece of wood. He showed her how to carve, shape stars, trees, even little animals. Lyra loved the feeling of making something new with her hands. She carved a tiny bird and gave it to Jace, who smiled and tied it to his bag with a piece of string. The rain lasted most of the day, So they played games with stones and told stories using pictures in the dirt. Lyra drew a story about a brave girl and a kind traveler who fought a monster together. Jace laughed and added his own pictures, a silly-looking monster and a hero with a giant hat. The stories made them forget the cold and the storm outside. When the rain stopped, the world felt fresh and new. The trees sparkled with water, and the air was filled with the smell of wet earth. Jace suggested they gather fresh leaves and check the traps they had set in the morning. Together, they found 2 small rabbits caught in the traps. Lyra thanked the forest for its gift, as her people had always done, and Jace nodded with respect. That night, as they ate roasted rabbit and wild berries, Lyra realized she was no longer just surviving, she was living. She had learned so much from Jace, and he had learned from her. They were a true team, stronger together than alone. Lyra felt her fear shrinking day by day, replaced by something new and bright. As darkness fell, Lyra looked at the stars through the open door of the shelter. She remembered the pain and hunger of the past, but she was not alone now. Jace sat beside her, humming his gentle songs. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, she let herself believe in happiness again. They did not know what tomorrow would bring, but they were ready for it side by side, friends and survivors, building a new future together. The world was still full of danger, but Lyra was not afraid, because Jace was with her, and together, they could face anything. A new threat. The days after the storm were peaceful, and Lyra felt truly happy for the first time since she could remember. The forest was green and bright, the shelter was warm, and she and Jace were never hungry. But peace never lasted long in this wild world. One evening, Lyra was collecting berries not far from the shelter. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and purple colors. She hummed softly, thinking about the small wooden bird she had carved yesterday. Suddenly, she heard voices, strange, harsh voices that made her freeze. They were not animals or forest sounds. Lyra knew them at once. They were the voices of her own people, the ones who had left her behind. She dropped her basket and rushed back to the shelter. Jace saw the fear on her face and quickly put down his tools. Lyra pointed to the trees and tried to explain with simple words and gestures, "People, my people here." Jace's face became serious. He checked his bag and picked up his walking stick, holding it like a weapon. Soon, the voices came closer. 3 figures stepped into the clearing, 2 alien men and a tall woman, all dressed in worn clothes. Their eyes were cold and hungry, just as Lyra remembered. One man shouted at Lyra in their language, his voice sharp like a knife. He said she was supposed to be dead, that she was weak and not welcome. The woman sneered and asked if Lyra had begged the human for food and protection. Jace stood in front of Lyra, his body firm and protective. He did not understand their words, but he knew their meaning. The taller man pushed Jace with his shoulder, trying to make him move. Jace held his ground, refusing to let them near Lyra. The other man laughed, calling the human a fool for helping, an abandoned outcast. Lyra's heart raced with fear and shame. Old memories came rushing back her tribe turning away, her cries ignored. She felt like a small child again. But this time, she was not alone. Jace did not leave her side. He spoke to the strangers in his own language, his voice calm but strong. He pointed to Lyra, then to his heart, making it clear he would protect her. The group argued for a long time. The woman told Lyra to come back with them. She promised things would be different, but Lyra saw the lie in her eyes. The men tried to grab her arm, but Jace stepped between them and shook his head. He would not let them take Lyra. Finally, the strangers grew angry and left, but not before shouting a threat. They promised to return, and that next time they would bring more people. Lyra stood shaking, her hands cold with fear. Jace put his arm around her, comforting her as best he could. The danger was not gone. Now they had enemies who knew where they lived. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She sat by the fire, thinking of the old days of hunger, loneliness, and pain. She worried the strangers would come back and hurt Jace or destroy their shelter. Jace stayed up with her, watching the door and listening for any sounds outside. In the morning, Jace started making plans. He showed Lyra how to make traps and alarms with old cans and string. Together, they built a wall of fallen branches around their shelter. Lyra helped as much as she could, remembering the lessons Jace had taught her. She knew she was stronger now, and she did not want to run away. She wanted to fight for her new home. For the next few days, Lyra and Jace watched the forest closely. Every sound made Lyra jump, but she tried to stay brave. Jace practiced with his stick, teaching Lyra simple moves to defend herself. He told her, using gestures and simple words, "We are a team. Together, strong." Lyra believed him. One night, as they were eating dinner, Lyra looked at Jace and realized she was not just surviving anymore. She was fighting for a life worth living. She remembered the pain her people caused, but now she had someone who believed in her. Jace had chosen to stay, even when things got dangerous. Lyra smiled for the first time in days. "Thank you," she whispered. Jace did not understand all her words, but he nodded and smiled back. They would face whatever came together. Lyra was no longer weak or alone. With Jace by her side, she was ready for the future, even if it meant facing her past once again. The night was dark, and the danger was real, but Lyra felt something she thought she had lost forever: hope. Chosen family. The night was quiet, but Lyra did not sleep. She sat close to the fire, her knees tucked under her chin, staring at the flickering flames. Jace was awake too, quietly checking the traps around their small shelter. The words and threats of her old tribe echoed in Lyra's mind, but she was not the same scared girl they had left behind. This time, she was ready. The next morning, the sun rose golden and soft. Jace cooked breakfast and smiled at Lyra, trying to make her laugh. She managed a small smile, but the worry in her heart stayed. She knew her people would come back. Jace saw her sadness and gently put his hand on her shoulder. "We face them together," he said, slowly, in simple words they had learned from each other. Later that day, Lyra heard shouts in the distance, many voices, not just three. The tribe had returned, and they were not alone. Lyra's heart pounded. She and Jace quickly checked their defenses. The alarms were ready, the sticks and rocks prepared, and the small wall around their home was stronger than before. Soon, the group appeared at the edge of the clearing. There were 5 of them, now 3 from before, and 2 new, stronger men with angry faces. The woman called out, "Give us the girl, she belongs to us." Her voice was sharp and cold. Jace stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the tribe. He spoke in his own language, his voice steady and brave. He pointed to Lyra then, to his heart, then to the shelter. He would not give her up, no matter what. The tribe grew angrier. One of the men tried to rush forward, but the alarm cans rattled loudly, and he stopped, startled. Jace held up his stick, showing he would fight if he had to. Lyra felt fear, but she also felt something else: strength. She remembered all she had learned with Jace. She was not helpless. The woman tried to trick Lyra again. "Come with us, and you will have food and safety. You don't belong with a human." But Lyra shook her head. She looked at Jace, then back at her old tribe. In a clear, steady voice, she said, "I belong here. He is my family now." The tribe did not like her answer. The 2 new men moved to attack. Jace stood ready, but before they could get close, Lyra grabbed her own stick and stood beside him. For a moment, no one moved. The tribe stared at her in surprise. They never expected her to fight for herself, or for a human. Suddenly, a loud shout came from the trees. One of the traps had been triggered. The noise scared the attackers. Jace took the chance and used his stick to knock one man's legs out from under him. Lyra swung her stick at the other, forcing him to back away. The tribe, frightened by the alarms, the traps, and the unexpected strength of Lyra and Jace together, decided it was not worth the fight. They shouted angry words and quickly ran into the forest, disappearing among the trees. Lyra dropped her stick, her breath shaky but her heart full of pride. Jace turned to her with a big smile. "You were brave," he said. Lyra smiled back, her eyes shining. The danger was gone. They had won, not with hate, but with courage and teamwork. After the tribe left, Lyra felt a strange peace settle in her heart. She realized she did not care what her old people thought anymore. She did not need to belong to them. She had made her own place in the world right here with Jace. He was her chosen family, the one who never gave up on her, the one who taught her to believe in herself again. That night, they celebrated with the last of the berries and fresh fish from the stream. Jace played a gentle tune on his fixed music player, and Lyra hummed along, making up a song in her language. The fire crackled, and for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt truly safe. Days passed, and the forest grew quieter. No one from the tribe came back. Lyra and Jace continued to build their life together. They made the shelter bigger, planted small seeds for a garden, and carved new stories into the wooden walls. Each season brought new challenges, but they faced them side by side, stronger than before. Lyra sometimes thought of her old life, the hunger, the cold, the loneliness. But now she looked at Jace and remembered the kindness he showed her when she had nothing. His love had changed everything. She was no longer the girl left to suffer. She was a survivor, a friend, and most of all, part of a family she had chosen. Herself. Under the stars, Jace and Lyra would sit together, sharing memories and dreams. The pain of the past slowly faded, replaced by hope and happiness. And in that wild, beautiful world, they proved that even the most broken souls could find a place to belong if only someone chose love instead of turning away. The end.